just thank you so much for giving me your time. I'm gonna pick your brain in the realm of short films for our lovely audience. So the majority of our audience are just lovely budding. Well, I say budding short filmmakers. They all actively make amazing short films. So yeah, this obviously I need to speak to you because I mean your resume by this point is just like ridiculous, from like what you've achieved in short films to what you've achieved in features, which is literally like legendary now, out of date. Like like Blue Story, by the way, because we haven't had a proper talk about this, but this is like because the last time I saw you, you were literally like, I think had you guys even filmed it there? I think had you guys. I don't think you guys
No.
had filmed it. You were like heavy in prep for it, and you were like, "This is,
Yeah.
yeah, this my focus right now." Blah blah blah. And then
Yeah.
now it's like it just blew up all over the place.
Don't know what happened there.
uh, I do know what happened there because like this is like a recurrent theme when you're involved with a project. So so I'll start with one of the last short films that I'm aware that you're involved with, which is Kobe's Haircut.
Yeah.
So, like, talk to me about that because that again, another incredible achievement in short film. And so, how did was that something you were involved with from the beginning, or did Kobe send you a script? And then how did that all like come together?
Well, I knew Kobe anyway from before because we did a short. We had just done a short called House Girl, which he did, which is his final year project at London Film School. So I already knew him, and Haircut came about because he wanted to do a feature, but I felt that he wasn't ready. So
Mm,
I was like, maybe let's do one more short because feature filmmaking, it's a different level, it's different skill set, and I don't particularly think it's very possible to go straight out of film school and into a feature film just because the processes are different, and what they teach you in film school isn't what you do on a film set. So in terms of like in film school you do everything, but on a film set you're just a director, so to speak. um so I said to him to let's do another short to be able to push him and to make him to elevate him as a director and to challenge him a bit more.
mm,
And so that's where that came from. And so he wrote a short, like there were a few shorts that he wrote beforehand, and he sent me Haircut, and I was like, oh, this is the one. It was loosely based on something that happened in his barber shop. So yeah, we just worked on that, and I thought it would be a shout to give it to London Calling Plus at the time, before it became the whole BFI network situation. And that was sort of like the very easy version of that journey, because the whole point of that short was to prepare him to be able to do a feature or something similar.
nice, nice. And before I segue into Blue Story, I guess because this is something, one of the best pieces of advice I was given as a director is like spend less time spend less time networking with directors and more time networking with producers. Like build relationship with producers. And I've actually had like such a challenging relationships with producers in the sense of like either it's their first time or so usually you feel like it's a producer giving you like the benefit of the doubt. It's always sort of been the other way around is what's kind of bitten me in the ass. But I mean, obviously it's instrumental to a director's progress, but how important do you think it is for directors to be, um, you know, pushing out their work to producers and trying to build a network of producers? And maybe how do you feel like is a good way to navigate that for like novice filmmakers?
um I think you definitely need a producer. I think you need the right producer. It really comes down to, for me, it comes down to do you guys share the same vision? Are you making the same film? Because it's also about getting a producer who is at the, if not at the same level of your journey, at one step ahead, who can see a bigger vision. I don't think it's about, I think sometimes people make the mistake of trying to get like a very big producer because like, oh, you would definitely make my film, but they haven't got time to actually cater to what you really need. Producer director relations is all about, they're working marriages. It's long term. Um, I think when you first start out, it's important to find somebody who you can talk to as a friend, but also who you can talk to creatively, because that's just the relationship you're going to have. Uh, there will definitely be a lot of different producers who work differently, but I think most people have like one producer that they always try to work with just because of the relationship they have with that person. And I think if you can find that early on, that's a blessing to have. And it's not about, and I guess by finding that, I just mean like finding someone you get on with. Like, who do you get on with, and who do you believe can do the job? Because producing as you go along. Obviously, it's about knowing people, but it's also about people management. I feel anyway, and knowing how to be in each space that you're in. Because I think sometimes people think a good producer is just somebody who has access to like funds or money, or who just knows people. That's part of it. Don't get me wrong, but I think if you are a great communicator, if you are a good leader, and if you have a creative eye, you will always have access to those things anyway, because those three things will always lead you to to funding and to people watching you. It's that thing of, if me and you create a, like, a good piece of work off our backs, just because we're invested in it, people will always look at that and go, okay, what are you doing next?
Yeah.
And then and that means that me as a producer can be, okay, cool, we're doing this next. And that's already part of the come up. It's just, and that is just by me not having any money, but by just having that kind of sort of entrepreneurial spirit. Because that's how, that's what I did. It was, um we never had any cash. Before I met Kobe, I think Haircut was the only film that I've made that's got some sort of like funding behind it. Everything else that I've done is just like, you go out there, you hustle. All the equipment that I've gotten along the way is just by talking to people and asking them for favors, but being honest and just saying, this here's what I have. I want to give you more money, but I don't have more money. And but then always coming back to those people when I do have any money. So that's about building relationships. Um, and so you end up in situations where people will give you kit that is what, 20K, like 3 grand for over like 4 weeks, because you're nice, and I know it sounds like, so like, really, is that it? But it kind of is.
It really is, yeah.
It really is.
And it's interesting with you, just on that, just to stay on that a bit longer, because you're also a writer, right? So I think that's like a really interesting blend, because you also then have, as well as like a business and logistical understanding of the process, you also are empathetic about the creative side of the process, because you're a writer also, and I imagine that's in and how useful have you found in terms of like building good relationships with directors? Because I feel like whenever I've spoken to you about your a project you're working on, you seem so invested and like empathetic about the writing and the story that you guys are trying to tell, because of the fact that you're a writer as well. That's a pretty interesting blend I don't usually come across.
I think for me, the writing part, it definitely helps my conversation with directors, because we can have a very purely creative conversation where we're talking about characters, and we're talking about journey and structure. And I think also because I write, there are times when where I can be a bit more empathetic with a director who is struggling with, I don't know, some sort of like writer's block, or can't get past a particular thing in their mind. I think it's easier for me to kind of go, you know what, yeah, put the pen down, just go for a walk. Like, it's not coming. We're not going to force it out. It's not going to happen today. Take 2 days off, because that's also part of the writing process. Walking around and thinking is also writing. Like, writing isn't always just physically at your computer or on pen and paper. So I think that also kind of helps in that understanding. If I'm trying to write and it's not coming, I can't come and kill myself on top writing. It's not happening. The characters aren't coming. They're not coming in it. But I think, again, for me, most creative producers are the same. Not all producers are very creative in how they approach the work. Some are just how it is. But I think having a good creative producer on your team. It helps because it definitely helps you push the film, because I will always try to challenge the people I work with, because that is the point, isn't it? Like, especially when you're doing short films, you want the next one to be better, and the next one to be better, because you're trying to get up to making feature films. And if you're just in a static, one note throughout your short film career, you're never going to make a feature. That's the reality. So you need to have somebody who isn't afraid to just go, but why? But why? And you as a director or writer, you can't be precious. You have to, because end of the day, that's your audience. And I think people always get, obviously writing can be very personal, but when you get into what the industry is, you can't take everything too personal, because there's so many layers and so many facets that the personal can sometimes get lost when you start talking to other people. I think for yourself, 100% hold the personal right from there, but allow that to evolve. But I think, you have to be confident in your work, be able to like explain and answer, because if a person is asking you, why is your character doing A, B, C, D? And if you have to explain that, it means it's not on paper. And you need somebody there who's always going to be able to go, okay, but why is this happening? Why is that happening? Why don't we do this? And why don't we do that? And it's, filmmaking is collaborative. But in that process, you find that like after about 4-5 short films, you are in a whole different level. And then there will come that final short film that you do that will be more expensive than any of the other short films that you've done. And at that point is when I am about to make a feature film. Because when someone says to you, I will give you 50K to make a short film, they give you that money because your next thing is going to be a feature film, 100%. Like nobody just throws away 50K on a random short film. That doesn't happen. But when you get to that level, that's when you begin to fully be like, okay, that's why I've been doing. That's when the elevation kind of like, you're there. And after that short film, you do your first feature, which is the one and only time I feel when you're starting out in feature films that you can go crazy and you can do whatever you want to do. And people aren't going to be as precious if you don't make money. Because you know what? It's a first feature film. They usually don't make that much money, unless you're Ratman, obviously.
Yeah, I was about to say.
um, but usually they don't do that. But then after your first feature film, when it comes to your second, your third, your fourth, it's all about the money at that point. Again, you can still hold your creativity, but really, you're at that point in the business of filmmaking. Whereas in shorts, you were in the creativity of filmmaking. You could do whatever you wanted to do. Feature films are a bit more tired.
Amazing. That's a perfect segue now, because I was like, hey, if she's you're about to break a rule here, because that's not the case here. Let's talk about this Blue story. What the heck? Like, so how much did you guys originally make that for? Because I know it's just you guys. I know financially you guys surpassed expectation with how that film was received, and how has that journey been? Yeah, talk to me, because even from the press, because I'm a kind of guy where it's like I love filmmakers who like Nicholas Winding Refn will go to Cannes and he'll release a film and it will premiere, and this side of the auditorium's like screaming and cheering, and then this side's like spitting at the screen. And for the most part, you guys had obviously an incredible reception, but there was like this weird moment where I remember there was like an effort by some portions of the press to kind of demonize the project over stuff. But I always see stuff like that as like that kind of almost like kind of keep that kind of more affirms it in film culture at the time. It's the film that people are speaking about. So I was like, these guys are really killing it now. Like, it's like if at this point you're officially killing it now. When people are like when the press is even trying to like create problems, that's when when you're just the film of the town. So how was that process been?
It was a really good process. I think Blue Star was definitely one of those films where it was a different format, different way of working, but all of us really came together to create something. It was hard at times because we only shot in 4 weeks. So it was we had like the first week was 5 days and the rest of it was 6-day weeks, which is very intense because you've only got one like your one day off isn't really a day off.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's not. No way.
You go home and you sit down and you're like, oh, we're back tomorrow. That's what's happening. So, and then, our final week we had night shoots. So it was a very intense and hard process. But like I say, everyone really came together. They really kind of like was really a team effort. And I think that just came down to, I think Paramount and BBC just kind of let us do our thing and let us crew in a way that worked for us, and having people on set who understood what we were trying to achieve and trying to do. But yeah, I mean, like filmmaking, man, it's mad.
That was I mean, and what's the like what's the I guess the biggest challenge for you with a project like that, or what was the biggest challenge for you during a project like that? And you're like,
It was,
this challenge me at this point.
we had different challenges, I mean, like part of it was also, there's that thing of halfway through the shoot, because we were meant to shoot in South London, the entire thing. Halfway through, we're shooting in Broccoli. Then the council is like, we couldn't shoot like any scenes with knife or guns in South London because of, there was a spike in knife and gun crime. And we're trying to explain, but it's an anti-violent message. There's no blood, there's only one scene has any blood in there, but we had to move the shoot. So, halfway through the shoot, we're still scouting locations. And then we ended up moving the shoot all the way to like North London, like proper Enfield. And I was like, it's mad because you're in a whole different territory. You've planned a shoot and a budget around South London where you don't have to move around a lot, where all the locations are near each other. Suddenly you're spending 2 weeks in a whole different location where the locations are not as close to each other. People are coming from mainly south and east to like deep Enfield. And even our final, like the final scene in Blue Story, we shot it in like a forest in, God, what was it? Was it Waltham Abbey or something, like a night shoot? It was one of those shoots where like on some days I'm like, why are we in Enfield again? Like, what's going on? What's going on? So I think, again, like I say, everyone came together, everyone made it happen, because we all really kind of pulled through. But there are times where I'm looking at the budget going, raw. We're in Enfield, isn't it? And like I said, it was tough. There were times I was like, are we gonna make this film to the very end? So I mean, Bless Raps, he had to make some decisions as well in terms of setting scenes and compromises, because money's tight when stuff like that happens. So certain creative decisions have to shift. So with stuff like that, I think that really kind of made it difficult. I think that was our main thing, and because we only had 4 weeks to shoot. Like if we had 5 weeks, that would have been so much easier. Because time, you can never complain about having more time, especially when we're shooting at a time when there wasn't a lot of sunlight. So we were shooting like, what was it, March, April. So, your days you're losing light quicker. So that was hard on some days where you're shooting and you're like, oh, we're running behind. Oh, there's no sunlight. Let's just keep going, because what are you going to do? We have no other days. We have no more money to do. So it is what it is. But yeah.
Champion efforts though, because I mean, it all wonderfully worked out.
It did. It really did.
And also, I don't want to neglect actually the producers, because there will be producers in this community of ours. And so, like, what's a piece of advice you might chuck at somebody who maybe they produce like just like one short film right now, and in terms of like them. In terms of finding their voice or their stance as a producer, they obviously got a few more short films to produce, but obviously the ambition is to produce a feature film, or maybe there's a lot of ambitious filmmakers that are just straight trying to go into like low budget feature films, these like 90-minute shoestring kind of feature films. What kind of, because you've been there, done it, wearing the t-shirt as we speak. What kind of direction, I guess, would you say, could you give to those guys? My guy, guys and cats.
Just keep on doing the work. I mean, honestly, I think it's about finding your voice as a producer, and by that I just mean it's about finding what you like, finding what you want to make. Because I think, sometimes I get some emails, and I don't think the producer has a voice, so I don't think that they fully understand what it is they're trying to do. And I think it's about understanding why you making films. I mean, for different people, there's different reasons, but I think most people will either tell you they love films, they just love movies. Some will tell you that they love telling stories. Um, some will tell you it's about representation. But ultimately, it's like, what is it that pulls you towards films, and find what that is and hone in on that, because that would then determine the kind of films you're making and the voice. And I think, educate yourself. Like, just like Google is amazing. Educate yourself on how to read scripts, or and read a lot of scripts. Read books on scripts as well, like, stuff like Save the Cat, the hero's journey, the writer's journey. Like, read those books so that you understand um, what a good script is and how to write a good script. I mean, you haven't got to write it, but I think, but just by knowing it, it helps you to identify a good story. Because I think that's also very important for you as a producer to know is story structure and how you can push your writer director in terms of what of storytelling. And I think don't be afraid to make mistakes. Make as many things as you can, terrible things, good things, amazing things, things that fall apart, and make those mistakes now while there's no big money at stake.
Yeah.
And within that, find your people, find the people that work for you, find the people that you can journey with, and that will always change, and that's okay. Um, but right now is the time to be able to find your voice, find your people, and find what being a producer means. Because half the time for me, 'cause my mother's always like, "What are you doing?" Because she doesn't understand what a producer is. So if I'm not on set, she's confused as to what my job is. But producing, most of producing when you're not on set is just meeting people and
Yeah.
talking to people and talking to more people, and establishing relationships. And you can't be afraid to fail at things, because you're about to enter into a world in which, like in the feature film world, without making it sound too daunting, at the end of the day, if we made Blue Star at 1.3 million and it flopped, we just lost 1.3 million. That's we lost money, and we can't be afraid to do that, because after that's happened, I still got to go make another film. Like, this is my, what I mean? Like, not every film you make is going to make money. Fact. And you have to be okay with knowing that sometimes you will fail. And I think that stems from being able to fail doing short films. Like, there are times when I have tried to make things halfway through production, we had to stop because something happened. We couldn't do it. I'm embarrassed because I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm letting everyone down. I mean, I'm like that for a week, but you know what? Everyone moves on with life.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, we might all talk about it, like, oh my God, and I think that thing of I was going, oh my God, poor me, poor me. But you know what? Yeah, like, if that didn't happen to me then, there were like a few times where things were really bad. But if that didn't happen to me then, I couldn't be able to be here and be like, you know what? Yeah, I've been through that before. Like, let me just keep it moving. Um, because you will lose people. People will be annoyed with you. People will say a whole heap of madness, but you've got to build that thick skin now when you're making shorts, just to prepare you for the madness of this industry.
I am curious to get like one horror story from you, because this is the one thing I'm very fortunate that I always, at the time, I didn't feel fortunate, but I feel like I've experienced every kind of scary thing you can experience in making. Like, I'm not afraid of anything when it comes to films now, because the very first one I tried to make, like nearly 10 years ago, similar thing. I was like, we got like 3 days in or something like that, and then I'd never produced a film before, so I didn't. And I bear in mind, I'd left uni, I dropped out of uni to make this film. Like, I think this is what I'm really supposed to do. Like, otherwise, I sit in lectures just daydreaming about making films. I don't take any notes. So I leave uni to like on this bold route to become a filmmaker, and I get 3 days into shooting this film that I've written with like this small team, and I just didn't understand. Yeah, it kind of just fell apart, like logistically and the planning, and then I didn't really understand how to like get it back on track. And I was devastated. I kind of retracted into like a ball for like a couple of years. I don't think it was like until maybe like it took me 3 years to recover. I was really like, no, I'm not gonna. This is it. I'm not a filmmaker. I'm like, I was over ambitious, blah blah blah. And then I think I watched Nicholas Winding Refn's Drive, and then I was like, oh no, actually that's why, to give some kid this feeling, I've got to make films again, because this is what the feeling I want to be able to give to someone, because that film just reminded me how much I love films that you can just jump into a world and get lost away with. And then obviously I made a short film, and it was fine. But then even since then, I've had experiences where we're shooting a film abroad on a tight budget, and I've had our sound guy show up 2 hours late and realize, and we already had like a scene to try and catch up on that day, and then realize that alone meant that I was going to lose the end of the film. Basically, I had no ending as of that moment, and you're trying to work out, okay, how do I've got no ending. I've got like literally no ending. Or even on the last short film I did, we had a location on day 2 that we were supposed to go to. That location, they called us up and they were, oh, by the way, something's happened at this office building. Like, no one can come inside. And we're like, oh, okay, that's like a really instrumental scene in the film takes place there, and we don't know where else we can schedule anything else, because we're already like cramming things in. And so we didn't deal with it until the last day. It was a similar thing. It was like last day. It's like, we don't have this scene and we don't know where we can film it. It's like, but by that point, it was kind of like, I'm not bothered, guys. It'll be fine. Like, one, you either learn that you have the temerity to withstand that pressure and figure out a solution and problem solve. And then I think just in general, like when you stop being afraid of failing, you're like, well, the worst thing that can happen is I've already experienced like a film completely falling apart. That's not gonna happen, and that's the worst thing. And I've been there and done that. So even if that did happen, I'd survive. But like at the worst, we're just gonna make like a rubbish scene. Like, it's not gonna hold up to the quality everything else did. But even then, that probably won't happen. And if that did, I'm not that afraid of it. But it's interesting you say like, yeah, your failures and your mistakes kind of do enforce this kind of learning curve that means you'll be like, okay, I understand this. But I need one horror story. What's one like? But that was a lesson, obviously. That kind of, you're like, oh, okay, this I can do anything after this.
What stand up was just that it was twofold. It was a friend. I had like friends at the time who went in filmmaking. They didn't know anything about filmmaking, which you never use when it comes to filmmaking, to help me out with the film. One person was on location, one person was on clothes, and so the location person was like, I was like, oh, we need a bar. She's like, yeah, I got you, Joy, sorted. My friend, he's the manager. He's in this bar. He's gonna let us in the next day. Cool. Did the first day. It was all calm, cool. The clothes situation was a bit, it weren't really working too well. But you know what? It's cool. We're getting through it, because she was also on hair and makeup as well. We're getting through it. So the following morning, we arrive at this bar on time, got all the kit that I spent money on. Like, fair enough, it was a deal, but I had put money in the shoot already, right? So we're at this place waiting. It's like ringing, calling. No one's coming. I was like, are you sure? She's like, yeah, he's here. Tell me what's gonna be here. He was like, he's not even leaving. Like, he's staying here from like last night. He's not going nowhere. I was like, okay. Half an hour goes by, nothing. So like, we go into the Costa coffee to sit around and wait. Then it's an hour has gone by. This person is not around. And the cast are like, the fuck is going on? Because the day beforehand, they were already a bit like iffy, because like with the whole clothes situation not really going too well, hair and makeup wasn't, they weren't really happy with what was happening so far. So now, next day, this is and this is the day where we have to shoot loads in this place. Um, we can't even get to the location, and I'm just sitting there like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Because at this point, I am producing it, I am directing it. Because it's like back in the day, and I remember calling this guy who was like a mentor to me at the time, and I was like, what do I do? And he's like, Joe, you've got to call it off. I was like, no, I can't. I'm letting everyone down. This is so bad. I'm letting everyone down. And he was like, you've learned a lesson, like in terms of like how you structure your shoots and who you trust, and and also, and by you calling this off, it's also a lesson to know when it's time to say enough is enough and to just say it's not working and move on.
Yeah,
And that was hard because I was like, oh, but the money I put in it, like the kit, this and that, what I should, like, you think about all the things and you're like, okay, lesson learned. Nobody was happy with me. The cast were very upset. I don't think they even spoke to me again. But I was kind of like, oh, this is a bad thing. I can't produce. I can't do anything. Look at me now.
yeah.
I'm still doing it. But it was a lesson in organization, a lesson in planning, a lesson in getting the right team. I'll give you one more horror story that taught me a lesson in having an appropriate amount of backups.
Okay.
I shot
Oh,
I shot a film with a guy who was a director slash DP. No, we everything was shot. It was cool. We all went home, and I messaged him going, "All right, like a week later, can I get the hard drive?" He was like, "Oh, I gave it out to somebody to use. They probably recorded over it by now." I was like, "I'm sorry, what?" I said, "You recorded over the film that we shot." He was like, "Yeah, but really it's your fault because as a producer, you should have actually given me a backup." And I was like, when you're a bit like, bro, you knew the film was on that hard drive and you still recorded over it. That shit broke my heart.
yeah. No, that's my least
Um,
favorite horror story. Thomason has one of those where he like lost a whole day's filming. I was like, no, 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 because this has never happened to me. And I'm just like,
no,
no. No.
that was the entire film. The entire film was gone.
Did you guys
And
reshoot?
we couldn't reshoot because
Oh,
like there was no money to reshoot that film. Like the entire thing. And it was a beautiful story, beautiful film. Well, I thought anyway at the time. Uh, I was so upset, but lesson learned. Now I get 3 backups.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I got 4 backups. I got 5
I'm
backups.
like,
I got backup after
there's
Reese.
the hard drive, there's a backup of the backup because I'm not playing with anyone.
It's like, Joy, the film's out now. It's fine. Like, it's in theaters. No, I want another backup.
I still have the back.
Yeah, that is honestly like I learned that lesson through other people's horror stories because I've definitely put
Yeah.
myself in a position with that. I mean, I've always had backups, but I've put myself in a position where like I remember like both hard drives were in one place one time, and a bag nearly got damaged, and I was
Mm.
like, just that alone, I was like, never keep the hard drives together,
Yeah.
like, like otherwise it just like
And
makes.
also, to be fair, like on haircut, it was kind of interesting because we had 3 backups, and 2 of those 3 backups were just like damaged in general. Not because of any fault around. I remember that the editor was a bit like, "Oh, just get like 3 backups just in case, because you never know." And yeah, it was. And I think of all of them, only one hard drive was actually working. The other 2 hard drives were just corrupt. Like it happens. So you want to be in a situation where you're just covered.
Yeah,
Um, those are my horror stories.
they're pretty good ones. You should literally make a horror film about those.
No.
To be fair. All right, this is my wrap up question for everyone,
Yeah.
which is it's appropriate to COVID-19 especially. So you are, COVID-19, the lockdown, they go overboard and they're like, okay, guys, we have to take social distancing to a whole new level. We are sending you to a remote island by yourself indefinitely, and you can take a solar powered projector and 3 movies of your choice. Maybe throw a series in there if you want to, but we'll call that a 4th, a bonus, wild card. So, what are your 3 movies?
Un Prophet.
Okay, I've never seen it.
You should watch it. It's
Okay.
an amazing film.
Put it on the list.
Lady Vengeance.
Okay.
Because it's crazy. In the Mood for Love.
Oh, sick film. Sick film. Nah, you had those in the pocket. You had those at the ready. You were like, I've got these already. I've thought about this. I'm prepared. Like, these are on me at all times.
You know what? Yeah, they on Twitter. There have been a lot of these challenges. Name your top 5 films, your favorite 5 films. So I'm just regurgitating. But also, those are the films that I can watch over and over and over again, and each time just sit there going, "This is so beautiful."
Yeah.
You know.
Especially in the mood. That's it. Especially in the mood for love. That's one of those films.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And Lady Vengeance, I watched it again recently. That film is mad, but you know, when you really look at what he's done in that film, I'm always there going, how does this come out of your brain? Because it's like it's just it's different, it's innovative, it's creative, very sadistic, but but still, for you to kind of go there and still be able to evoke emotion out of people, I think it's an amazing thing. And then Prophet, for that genre and what he's done with that film, structurally, I just think it's amazing.
Beautiful. Always beautiful hearing you talk about film. Thank you so much for your time. It was so nice catching up with you. We need to do it again. Famous last words. This is kind of our sign off. I mean, it's a sign off for the podcast, but I'll sign off with you properly afterwards. But yeah, famous last words.
Oh God.
Gotcha.
Okay. For me, it is actually assume nothing, question everything.